And so it is. Welcome to Fetch Events, Forms, Errors, stuff like that. So we're at working with this Bagels, Errors, and Stuff repo, which is at github.com/Kyle Coberly/bagels-errors-and-stuff. So working with this, let's say we want to handle just the post for this. I want all of you to write out what the post handler would look like for this. You're gonna have to add the event listener, do all the things involved with that, write the fetch request, pass the options in, that kind of stuff. Let's take a couple minutes to do that. Go. Then when you're done, you're gonna Slack that part of it over to me.
Can you repeat that, Kyle?
Yep. So right now we have this, we've got this form here, but in mod 2, we added an action and a method and it was all handled that way. Now we're doing all that with JavaScript. So I want you to write the JavaScript that's going to handle submitting that bagel. Another minute. All right, that's time. Slack me what you got, whether or not it's done or working or whatever. Just want to see what you got. While you're doing that, I was talking in the tavern last night about how my children are constantly interrupting my dramatic Harry Potter readings. And last night was no exception. They're in the Chamber of Secrets, and let's see. Tom Riddle is monologuing. So I'm going, it took a very long time for stupid little Ginny to stop trusting her diary, said Riddle, but she finally became suspicious and tried to dispose of it. And that's where you come in, Harry. You found it, and I couldn't have been more delighted. Of all the people who could have picked it up, it was you, the very person I was most like, Daddy? What? Is this the part where slugs come out of Juan's mouth? The moment's gone. No respect for timing, man. Good. Good. Very nice, Bryce. Nice, very good. All right, so we need to get the element. And that's new bagel form. Cool. We need to attach the event listener. We want to listen for submit events. So we've seen this a couple different ways now. You can do it that way. You can do it this way. I even saw one of you do it this way. All three of these are the exact same thing. More and more and more, you'll see the fat arrow or this one. See a little bit less of this every year, but they all work. Okay, so the event comes in. The first thing we need to do is
prevent default behavior.
Prevent that default behavior. Pew, pew, pew. So right now, if we submit the form, it won't do anything. It won't refresh the page, won't do shit. It'll be prevented default. Next thing we need to do is get the form data, which we can do by making a new form data instance. And pass in event.target. And then we want to get the data out. I saw you guys do this a couple different ways. So a totally legit way to do it would be something like we can totally do that. That's allowed. We can also do it this way. So we can do it like that, or we can do it like that. I like the second one because it keeps related data together. And that's ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to send this in the fetch request. So I like doing something like that. All right. Now we got to do the fetch. So I'm going to fetch to whatever that URL is. Not localhost. And then second argument to the fetch function, this object. I'll make a post. We want to set the headers. Let the backend know that we are sending over content type application JSON. And then for the body, we want that bagel data from up there, but we got to stringify it first. Cool, badass. So, questions about any of this so far? Good. So now let's talk about some other stuff. What if some stuff goes wrong? What if some stuff goes fabulously wrong? We want some way to tell the user that that happened. So let's make a place to put an error message. So go over to the HTML. I want you to put it in the form. You put it outside the form, doesn't matter. Put it inside the form. I'm going to give this a class of error. And just leave it empty. Most of the time, there's no error. Now, I can also say that I want my errors to show up red. Any guesses what we're going to do if something goes wrong?
DOM manipulation?
You're goddamn right. What kind of DOM manipulation? Walk me through the steps. We had a problem.
So then we're going to grab, we'll do like get element by class name, error.
So I'll write what all these things are. So, okay. Always use document.querySelector. There's no good reason to use the other three. QuerySelector and QuerySelector all are such better interfaces than get elements by class name, get elements by tag name, or get element by ID. Also, like, you don't accidentally pluralize the wrong one or any of that kind of shit. So, and we can do some stuff with QuerySelector that we can't do with any of the others. All right, so we get the error. Then what do we do, Bob?
Then we have to append it to the paragraph tag.
Oh, it already exists. It's there. I have the element. What's like just some boring ass generic error message? What can I do?
Hey, that didn't work. Something like that.
Sure. But like, how do I do that? How do I make it say, hey, that didn't work?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's kind of what I meant by appended to the whatever. All right,
Okay.
error.text content. Yeah.
Okay. That's like the laziest error handling we could do. So where we do that, anything that's a promise is something that you can dot then off of, like a fetch. We'll have some response. We do something if it went right. We also always, always, always want to have a dot catch somewhere in there. That's what's going to do, that's what's going to run if anything goes wrong. It also takes a function, and it's going to be some object that represents whatever went wrong. You don't even have to use it though. If something hinky happens, there we go. We displayed it to the user. So like, I'll show you this a couple different ways. There's no route handler for that. So that should throw an error. Ooh, actually, no, that's a good example. I'm gonna save that one. I'm gonna say, let's intentionally cause an error. How do we intentionally cause an error in JavaScript? There's a magic keyword for it.
Undefined.
That doesn't make an error. We're going to throw. Throw is how we like intentionally make an error happen. Throw new error. And then we could also pass a string into this if we want. All right. So let's see it in action. Light server. All right, so I got this thing. When this thing tries to submit, it should barf back at me. So type is ASDF. Rating, the best. So I add it. Oop. Something went wrong. Something in my app broke. On line 9. Anybody see it?
You need commas in the object.
Yes, I do. All right. Hey, look! Made something show up to the user. It's pretty cool. So what if we wanted to show that actual error that we threw? The WTF mate. Anybody know how we do that?
Isn't it something along the lines of error.message?
That's exactly what it is. Let's try it again. There we go. Here's a kind of neat thing about catches. You can have more than one of them. If we have all these promises here, if we throw a dot catch at the end of it, any problem that happens anywhere in this chain, if anything throws an error, it's going to go to the whatever function is in the dot catch. So some common stuff to do might be to display an error to the user. Might also display an error to anybody looking at the console with console.error. But here's the other neat thing about this. You can have more. So this catch is going to run if anything happens wrong with these two. If it makes it to this one and there's a problem, that catch is going to handle it. anything goes wrong here, it's that catch, and so on. So you need at least one at the very end. Some of you have gotten those errors that are like unhandled promise rejection because you didn't put a dot catch at the end. Yeah, even if you're not showing it to the user, just do that. Because then at least you see the error while you're working on it. So, what kinds of things are errors to fetch?
Server not found.
Server not found? That is.
So any response that's either 4 or 500.
No. And that's the fucking weirdest thing. Because those are errors, but it doesn't mean like the network didn't work. Fetch only considers something an error if the like request was not able to complete somehow. If it completed, but it gave you a 400 or a 500 level response, you have to handle that yourself. And here's how you do it. This response that comes back, let's take a peek at it. Okay, so here's this response object that I get back. This is what we normally call .json on. But we don't have to do that right away. We can also do stuff with this response object. So we got a 200 response. This is the status text. And this OK. OK means the response was 100 level, 200 level, or 300 level. It's false if it's 400 or 500 level. So we actually need to check for that. We can say something like, if not response OK, and then throw an error. Otherwise, keep on trucking, baby. That's a really counterintuitive thing about fetch. And there's a lot of libraries like Axios, probably the most common one, that you can also use to do all the things you do with fetch. Basically, every single one of those libraries will throw an error if it's a 400 or 500 response, not fetch. Ask me some questions about this.
How would we access like the error messages that are returned, like for things not matching our params?
Ooh, very nice. So that's going to come back in the body of the response. So what we could do, this is kind of interesting. So shit, I think of how I want to show you how to do this. Because to read those responses, we need to parse the response. So here's how you do that. So before we throw this error, if the response isn't okay, then what we want to do is, let's see, return response.json, and then take the parsed response from that, and then throw that. So that might be something like parsed response dot error, whatever it is that you sent back from your API. But this is like the gnarly thing about that is, look, we're doing a dot then inside of a dot then. We're not chaining it, we're nesting it. Because we can't throw that error, we can't access that message until the response has been parsed. And then I presumably want to keep doing something with the response if it was good. So I end up doing the same thing there. And then I probably have some kind of handler like that. Take a second, just read that. Just look at it for a while, like a minute. Questions?
Does it automatically jump to the catch like the moment the error is thrown?
Correct.
But it's only going to the catch if something's wrong with the HTTP request, right?
Or you throw an error. The problem is that a 400 or 500 level HTTP response doesn't throw an error. Fetch doesn't consider that anything wrong. That will go to your catch block. Cool. Let's talk about optimistic versus pessimistic rendering. What do those mean?
Hey, I'm sorry. Can I backtrack a little and ask
Yeah.
a question?
Please.
What? So my editor was telling me to make it an asynchronistic function. What does that mean?
Ooh. That is a great Mod 3 topic. It's probably not a good today topic, but I'll give you a taste. There are two different ways to deal with promises. One is then chains. We can do like promise.resolve. Or let's just say I did a fetch. I fetched something. Then. So if I have these things that require some order to them, I can do them with then chains. The other way we can do that is with a thing called async await. So this is a different type of function called an async function. And instead of those chains, what we do is we await something like that. Same thing. It's a way to write your promises like synchronous code, like you would handle asynchronous stuff in Ruby or like a lot of other languages. I think it sucks. I'm not a fan of async await. And the reason why is like, this looks gorgeous. And it's so much better than like all of the, you know, functions that you'd have to throw in all of those things until there's no catch for async await. You have to like actually write try catch blocks. So every single one of these things ends up getting wrapped. In a little block like this. Oh no, all of a sudden it isn't so fucking readable now, is it? So all of a sudden our gorgeous synchronous looking async code is a complete disaster. That's why I don't like async await. But there's a particular type of developer that when async await came out was like, finally, no more thens. What? Because like the catch handling in then is magical. That is like the best error handling in all of programming. But some people just can't appreciate nice things. But you can do one or the other. You can actually technically do both. You can await a promise chain with thens. But they work with the exact same data type, and they do the exact same thing. One of them is functional, one of them is object-oriented. Cool. Any other questions? All right, let's talk about optimistic versus pessimistic. I added this bagel. I'm going to make it show up on the page after I add it. Optimistic versus pessimistic. What do those mean?
Optimistic is immediate user response, and pessimistic is when it's actually registered and everything goes through and it's all peachy keen response.
Correctamundo, baby. So let's say I have some function that just adds whatever the thing is to the page. Add bagel to page bagel. And it does some stuff. If I'm doing it pessimistic, that's pessimistic. I gotta wait for it to actually get added to the API and come back with some kind of positive response and make it through this whole maze. If and only if all that stuff works out, don't want it to show up on the page. On the other hand, so that was pessimistic. This is optimistic. I don't give a shit if it actually works or not. I want it to go on the page right away. Optimistic, pessimistic. Optimistic, pessimistic. Coincidentally, optimistic. Exact same thing. It really doesn't matter whether or not I put it there or there. Like nothing changes. Why?
Because of how the promise chains work?
Yep. Expand.
So even if it takes like 2 minutes, or not 2 minutes, that's forever, like 20 seconds to fetch the Bagel API, while it's doing that, it's going to go to the next function and wait for the response.
Yep. It's going to hit this fetch and go, oh, who knows when that's going to come back. And just immediately move on to this. And it's going to keep on going through whatever other things are on this page until that fetch comes back, and then it will start trying to work through the chains. But it's basically like, it's multitasking. You go, all right, well, I got some stuff. Oh, that thing's back. Cool, here we go. All right, well, I got stuff. Oh, cool, that next thing's back. That's how we handle asynchronous code in JavaScript. Optimistic. Optimistic. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. It's the only difference between those. So why would we do one versus the other? What's
Like
the
you-
advantage of optimistic rendering? I guess another way to put that.
Instant feedback to your user.
Oh yeah, your user thinks your app is fast as hell. So much stuff in UX isn't about something actually making something faster. It's about making it appear faster. Doesn't matter to your user either way. They feel like it's faster. You got a fast app. So yeah, I add something and it's just pow right there. I delete something, gone, blammo. So what's the trade-off with that?
Like, what if there is an error on the back end and it wasn't able to commit, but it kind of like showed them that it did?
Yep. Ah, I added it. Nope. It's okay. It's okay. You can shred the file. It's been deleted. Whatever. So we have some risk there. We might also run into a situation, like we can handle that. We can optimistically add it to the page. But then if there was a problem, we can yank it out of the page and go, oh, I'm so sorry. I know it looks like we added this thing. There was actually a problem. If that's a super rare occurrence, that might be a perfectly acceptable user experience. I'll tell you right now, for the code challenge next week, you got to be able to do both of them. They're both on there. I forget exactly what it is, but I think it's the deletes are pessimistic and the adds are optimistic. And like, that's a pretty good baseline. If I add something, I want to feel snappy. If I'm deleting something, I can wait. Other questions about optimistic versus pessimistic?
What are some other use cases for pessimistic?
I mean, it's purely about user experience with both of them. So I think the context kind of matters a lot. If it's a blog post, who gives a shit? It's a comment on a social media thing. I mean, shit, there was even a browser plugin for a while. Oh, no, it wasn't a browser plugin. It was a server plugin, I think. Something that shadow banned people's comments. So like you could add comments to a post, but nobody else ever saw them. So that's like an evil kind of optimistic rendering. Like, oh yeah, you really let that person have it. Never actually got saved anywhere but your browser. And so yeah, you can come back the next day. You put it in local storage or something like that, and you're like, man, no one's responded to me. It's because I melted them so good. So something like that. Now I've also Mike Pack, who's kind of a Denver legend, once worked on this app that was connecting hospitals in Africa. And he has this fascinating presentation on it about eventual consistency and like how you can view networks and the internet as this system of constantly trying to resolve the truth, but it's a process. It's always in motion. And so you go, this isn't true now, but it will eventually be true. So like you're trying to synchronize somebody's medical records in 2 different countries. The challenge is like the internet could be down, so you add it, but the connection is physically severed between those. So you need something that keeps retrying that request, and it'll eventually get there. But it might not be correct at any particular moment in time. So something like that, well, honestly, you could probably make the case either way. Maybe I want to optimistically see that it's in the process of being submitted, but it's grayed out or something, or there's a spinner next to it. And then pessimistically, I want confirmation that it actually happened. So you could even mix and match the techniques. It might be useful to know, I sent them the medical records, but I also know that it hasn't completed yet. Other questions?
So from like a UX design perspective, if you had something where someone submitted something and it did something incredibly complex on the back end that took, what, 20 seconds?
Sure.
How would you handle that? Would you have it pop up a message that we're working on it, or?
You totally could. So imagine you did something like add waiting message up here, optimistically.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the thing is done, we remove waiting message and add the thing to the page. Or if there's a problem, we remove the waiting message and show the error message. Remove the waiting message, show the error message. Those are some ways you can handle that. Something I've done a bunch of times, like this is common if you have a ton of network requests. Like you might have a network request that spawns another one that spawns another one. So I've done things where every single time I trigger off one of these requests, I do something like increment requests. So it's an array of these requests and you just keep adding it. Or you could say like push new request. And so you're just pushing these things onto an array. And then as they resolve, you pop them off of the array. And so you have a spinner that's showing up if length is greater than 0 on that array ever. That's something that works really well with reactive frameworks like React and Vue and stuff. One last quick one. Since somebody requested, like, what about the other data types? There's a ton of different input types that you can do. Look at them all. Except let's go to MDN because we're grown-ups. So here's like examples of all the different kinds of inputs that we can have. Most of the time, like it just has to do with validation. There are ways to make your strings have some kind of validation to them. Common one, URL. It'll just tell you if whatever you put in there was not correctly formatted as a URL. Same thing with email addresses. A lot of the number ones, same kind of thing. It's just constraining the number somehow. The more interesting ones, Search will that will like trigger autocomplete and stuff, and has like some other cool behaviors like those X's in browsers. Phone number, format it as a telephone number, and this is huge. If you pull it up on a mobile device, it doesn't also give you the alpha characters. I find this a little bit disappointing. So this is just a different kind of way to enter a number. Otherwise, it's still, when you do the formdata.get, it still just comes back as a number. But it's a slightly better way to input it. The thing that bums me out, though, is they don't have dual range sliders, where you have like a high and a low on the other side. I always thought that would be cool, and they don't. That you can do that with like plugins and stuff, but that's not built into the browser, which I think is a bummer. Date and time pickers, like that. It just comes back as a string like this. Month picker. So this one I think is fucking awesome. This is like really the one that does some kind of neat stuff. The color picker. So let's say the bagels had a color to them. So we take a look at what gets submitted with that color. Okay, so it starts out as that. Then we click on it, we get this color picker. You can pick a color. Any guesses what gets submitted?
The RGB value.
Not the RGB value. Super good guess.
X.
Close.
Value.
The hex. We just get that as a string. And then you can set the input's value to that string. Like if you're updating it or something, it'll be the same thing. It's kind of cool. Let's see. Password hides the thing that you're typing. And yep, there you go. There's your built-in input types. All right, any last questions about this before I send out the survey? Thank you.